Hello, everyone. So I was going to talk a little bit about sort of some of the gender differences that I see in some of my work and some of the stuff that we were reading about. So one thing that I was really surprised to sort of read about was the money raising practices of various sexes. So I was surprised to find that men tended to sell drugs more often and women tended to use theft or prostitution more often. The prostitution one isn't super surprising, unfortunately, but I was surprised that theft was more of a reality. But I think the reality of that is that I don't just based on observations and personal thoughts, I don't think there's as much of a market for male prostitution. So, be that as it may, I think also something I've observed in my work at Hillcrest. We're an inpatient facility and we are co-ed, and this is sort of within the realms of treatment, I think, but some of the various gender roles in completing chores in the house. So sometimes there's the expectation that women will cook and men will do something else like take out the garbage, right? And so this assumption can sometimes spill over into group and create tension in the group. And so I thought that was a really interesting sort of phenomena that was worthy of including in the forum. And then also in the reading, I was my interest was piqued about the role of sexual and physical abuse in addiction. Our sort of present numbers indicate that females experience sexual abuse more often than men, and so I'd be interested to see some of the links between sexual abuse and addiction. As we know, sort of trauma is often at the core of addiction, so I would be interested to compare the various genders. And then also something sort of just in my own introspection was the role of sort of pride and shame. And I think in men, typically, doing more drugs is almost something to be proud of, that I can drink you under the table, or I can smoke more than you, or I shot a whole gram the other day, was things that I've heard people almost boast about. And so it's interesting. And I think women, to a lesser extent, can sometimes be subjected to those pressures because of sort of some of the male-dominated sort of drug habits and attitudes, which I think is interesting. But also that women sort of, and maybe to a lesser extent nowadays, but women to a lesser extent are socialized to use drugs less, and it's not as sort of socially appropriate. So I think this can create an environment of shame around substance abuse. So that's sort of some of my thoughts about it. I'd be happy to hear some of your all thoughts about some of my thoughts. So I'll talk to you all in the forum.